Welcome to Bravehearts, the podcast dedicated to honoring heroes, both human and animal, personal heroes, national heroes, and unknown heroes. These courageous souls risk their lives so that others can live, and it is our mission to give them the recognition and respect they truly deserve. These are the stories we want to tell. Stay tuned and be inspired.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bravehearts Podcast.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Michelle. We're your awesome hosts.
Yes.
Here to educate you. We get to hear another awesome story from Elizabeth this week. So exciting stuff.
I'm so excited. I've been researching this episode. I've said this for my last couple episodes. I've been researching this episode for a little while. I got this book back in July, I think. And I started researching it pretty much right after I got it. So for like a month and a half, 6 weeks or so. And it's a loaded story. And I'm not going to be able to cover everything, but that's okay. So we're just going to jump into it. Michelle, what do you think of when you think of Colombia?
I actually think of, is it Pablo Escobar? How do you say his name?
Yeah, Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, Pablo Escobar. I think of his hippos. That's one of them. And then like Colombian coffee.
Oh.
I don't drink coffee, but I know Colombia has good coffee. That's like, I guess you see Colombian coffee everywhere. So
That's true, yeah. I didn't think about that one.
yeah, so that's kind of what I think of when I think of Colombia. Yeah. Amazon.
Oh, the Amazon. I'm thinking like the business.
Yeah, you're like, huh. Yeah, no. The rainforest.
Yeah, all good things, all good things. Well, because of this story, I think of cocaine.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, Colombia, I mention this later in the story too, but Colombia and many parts of South America are where the coca plant grows, which is the primary ingredient for cocaine. And we're going to be talking about a group who is very involved in cocaine production in this story. So there's a lot to cover. Yeah. Oh, if you didn't know, because we haven't said it yet, this is a two-parter. Another two-parter.
Yeah. We'll tell them at the beginning of this episode.
Instead of at the end. Surprise! Yeah. Okay, but for this episode, I want to mention my sources first. The book that I used is called Out of Captivity, Surviving 1,967 Days in the Colombian Jungle. And it's written by Marc Gonsalves, Keith Stansell, and Tom Howes with Gary Brozek as well. That's the book that I primarily used. I also referred to some articles that I will put in the show notes. I don't remember their names, and I don't have it pulled up right now, but we'll link them in the show notes. And with that, we're just going to jump in.
Let's go.
On Thursday, February 13th, 2003, Keith Stansell, Marc Gonsalves, and Tom Howes boarded a Cessna Grand Caravan that had been converted into a surveillance plane. Keith Stansell is the mission leader. He's an ex-Marine and had been working in Colombia for 4 years. He lived in Florida with his daughter, Lauren, and his son, Kyle. Keith was also engaged to his girlfriend, Malia. Marc also lived in Florida with his wife, Shane, and his 2 sons, Cody and Joey. Marc served in the Air Force, and after retiring from his service, he moved to intelligence collection. Tom Howes was the oldest of the group at age 49 and had been flying for 32 years. He began flying at the age of 17 in his hometown of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. He also lived in Florida with his wife, Mariana, and his son, Tommy. On this particular day, the crew, which was also included Tommy Janis, the pilot, and Sergeant Luis Cruz from the Colombian Army, was scheduled to perform a surveillance mission looking for coca farms and cocaine labs in the Colombian jungle. This was typical of the crew, since they work for a company contracted with the U.S. government to perform these surveillance missions with the goal of collecting intelligence on drug operations. The team received their specific orders for their missions from the U.S. Department of Defense. In Colombia, the missions specifically target cocaine production by the FARC, which translates to the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. Their job is extremely important because a large portion, as I mentioned, a large portion of cocaine smuggled into the United States is from Colombia and still is from Colombia and other parts of South America, other
Um,
parts of
this
South America.
this may sound like a stupid question, but is cocaine illegal in Colombia as well?
Yes, it is illegal
Okay.
in Colombia. So it is legal to chew or brew into teas, but the cultivation and sale and trafficking of the coca plant leaves for the purpose of producing cocaine is illegal. So drug
Okay.
operations are illegal. Using the plant to chew or to brew in tea is legal. The crew was up in the air within a few minutes and heading toward their assigned coordinates for surveillance. As the crew flew over the jungle, they suddenly lost their engine. To their luck, Tommy J, the pilot, spotted a clearing in the distance that he would attempt to land in instead of crashing through the jungle canopy. The plane made initial contact with the tree canopy as Tommy J maneuvered the plane with its rapid descent. Shortly after, the aircraft made contact with the jungle floor and was torn to pieces. Once the aircraft came to a stop, Keith, Sergeant Cruz, and Mark quickly evacuated the plane. The three men got out of the aircraft and ran around to the other side to help both Tommy J and Tom Howes exit the plane. Tom had been knocked unconscious, and Tommy J had serious injuries. As they proceeded to help one another, they heard gunshots being fired in their direction. It was at this moment that they realized that there was a patrol of 50 to 60 FARC guerrillas heading their way, yelling, shouting, and firing at them. At this point, Keith, Mark, and Sergeant Cruz began to hide evidence of their mission and discard the few small firearms that they had. After throwing their weapons into the jungle and burying papers and other important documents, the guerrillas were upon them. All the men took a step forward, exclaiming, "No armas," meaning no weapons, in an attempt to communicate that they were unarmed. The guerrillas, many of them young teenagers, were armed and forced Tom, Keith, and Mark to move down from the crash site to the bottom of a small ravine. How would you feel seeing 50 to 60 young men and women running towards you with AK-47s and a grenade launcher and M17s?
I would be very frightened.
Yeah.
Especially, like, the adrenaline of, like, crap, if they figure out that we're, like, surveillance and military, we're dead for sure. So then you're trying to bury like you said, like, they were burying the things, throwing away their weapons,
Yeah.
hoping you didn't
I
forget anything, like, that would be terrifying.
yeah, I could not imagine what's going through their mind at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the group's leader, the FARC group's leader, a woman named Sonia, searched the plane, and while she was doing so, Keith, Mark, and Tom looked above them to the top of the ridge where Tommy J and Sergeant Cruz still were standing. And that was the last they saw of those two men. All three of the men, both Keith, Mark, and Tom, were extensively searched by the guerrillas. They stripped down to their underwear, and the guerrillas removed money from the men's wallets and any other things they found valuable or fascinating that the men had with them. The guerrillas then proceeded to search the men for microchips. They told them that if they found a microchip, they were going to kill them. The propaganda that had been fed to the FARC guerrillas by the leaders included many false assumptions about Americans, including them being microchipped and their voices being able to be picked up on U.S. satellites,
Dang.
right? Just things that we hear as kind of a joke, but these people were convinced that they were real, they were true. After being searched, helicopters could be heard moving in, most likely the Colombian army in response to the crash. However, Keith, Mark, Tom, and the 50 or so guerrillas were already next to the tree line on the opposite side of the ravine. They all moved into the dense jungle. The helicopter began firing its minigun at some of the FARC who were still on the jungle's perimeter. In the distance, there was another large clearing with a decent-sized home that the FARC indicated they needed to move to. Once the three men reached the edge of the clearing, the FARC indicated to Keith, Tom, and Mark they, that they wanted them to run across the clearing to the building. With the helicopter circling above, each of the men began their journey across the clearing, taking cover when the helicopter came back around. This marked day 1 of 1,967 days hostage in the Colombian jungle. Now, we're going to learn about their time in the jungle, but as I mentioned earlier, we don't have the time to go into all the details because there are so many things that happen to them and there's a lot of people that they meet. So, to try to keep it simple, I'm only going to use names of FARC guards or leaders when I feel it's necessary for context. And I'll also break up their time in captivity different time into their times on different marches and in different camps. Do you have any questions so far?
So far, there's the three people um, that were moved to the other building, and the other two guys we don't know. They were just never seen again,
Yeah,
right?
they didn't see them again.
How many years is that? 1,000. I'm gonna try to do the math.
Yeah.
How many
So
years is that?
1,967 days is 5.5 years.
Jeez. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
our three
a very
hostages.
long time to be.
Yeah. Can you imagine? 5.5
That's-
years.
Yeah.
That would be like you
Insane.
having been gone. Your oldest is 7. So that would have been you leaving her at 1.5 years old and then coming back for her birthday this last week.
That's insane. That's a long time.
It is a long time. Like we say it and we think, oh, it's not like that long, 5 years. But when you think about all that happens in 5 years.
And I'm sure we're gonna learn the 5 years wasn't like, oh, I was just gone for 5 years and missed it. No, they were probably not treated the best, I'm guessing. And it's probably not the most pleasant time.
No, it's not a vacation. That's for sure. For the first few days, the men were on a march through the dense Colombian jungle with just the clothes on their backs. Not long into their march, the FARC gave them FARC uniforms, jungle camouflage pants, and t-shirts, as well as the standard FARC rain boots to eliminate the chance that the Colombian army could track the Americans because of their different footprints in the jungle. Mark and Tom were given clothes and shoes that fit them pretty well. Keith, however, was much bigger than the guerrillas, and they didn't have any clothing that would fit him. His shirts and pants were too tight, and his boots too small. However, the FARC would not let him keep the shoes and clothes that he was already wearing, and they insisted that he wore theirs. Instead, to accommodate Keith's large feet, they just cut the toe of the boots off and made him put them on and made him wear them.
Wow.
Yeah, so his toes are exposed.
Yeah, and I'm sure walking through the mud and the vines and stuff, it wasn't very pleasant.
Yeah, definitely not. This first march lasted 24 days. The men really struggled because of the jungle terrain, pre-existing medical conditions, and injuries that they had sustained in the crash. Tom had a large laceration on his head and likely a concussion. Keith felt that he may have some injuries and was also wearing shoes and clothes that did not fit. And Mark had bad knees, but despite he was much quicker in the march than Keith and Tom were. Most of this march occurred in rivers in an attempt to avoid detection and tracking by the army. And the rocks in the river were so slippery that the men found themselves slipping and falling into the water often.
Do we know the ages of the men?
I know that Tom is 49. Let me look up their ages real quick.
And they're being escorted by pretty much teenagers and I'm guessing young adults, so...
Yeah. Okay, Mark was 30, Keith was 38, and Tom was 49.
Jeez. So, I mean, not super old, but not young.
Yeah. During this 24-day march, the men quickly learned to not trust the answers that the FARC would give them. When asked how much longer they had on their march or where they were going, the most common answer was Who knows? Tom described that in many ways that they were victims of their own hopes. The FARC would frequently feed them information that they would read into, causing them to get their hopes up, only for them to come crashing down days later. The 24-day march came to an end, and at this new location, they met more FARC leaders and members, including Mano Hohoy, who was the Eastern Bloc commander. Tom, Mark, and Keith mentioned that they were intimidated to meet him because they knew that he was one of the leaders responsible for many hostage deaths. In March of 2003, the first camp that Tom, Keith, and Mark lived in permanently, they called Monkey Village, because of all the monkeys they could hear and see in the trees. The shelter that they slept in at night was called a hooch, and during the day, they would swing in their hammocks, exercise, and try to do other things to keep their minds and hands busy. At one point in time, the FARC came to them with orders to separate the three men and to enforce silence between them. The men decided that they had to do anything that they could to communicate safely with one another. They would use hand signals, pass notes, or even use the flashlights provided to them to communicate.
Yeah, being separated, you're already in that, and I'm sure having each other was like the one thing they had. So being separated would
and they still are
devastating.
close enough that they can see one another, but they have separate hooches, so separate sleeping quarters, and they're not allowed to interact with one another. Each of the men coped with the challenges of being held hostage in different ways. Mark turned to his faith. He was raised Catholic, and though he did not regularly practice, he considered being held hostage a good opportunity to change how he practiced his faith. Tom would think about his house. Before he came on this assignment to Colombia, he had only been living in his house for 2 weeks. So he would visualize the home and walk into every room and make notes of the things that he wanted to fix when he returned. Keith would mentally take apart cars, motorcycles, and aircraft and then visualize putting them back together. Dang. These mental exercises were vital to increase their mental fortitude. During their stay at Monkey Village, the FARC began building a new camp not too far. They could hear the chainsaws in the distance. This meant that the FARC planned on being here a while longer. This is April to June of the same year that they were taken hostage. When the construction was finished, several days later, the men were moved to new camp. Here, the no talking and separation orders persisted, and it began to really take a toll on the men, especially on Tom. Tom was struggling to remain optimistic about their situation and felt a figurative load on his back since he was the only Spanish speaker out of the three of them. Keith and Mark depended on Tom and his ability to translate for them. It was a mentally demanding task for Tom. However, Keith and Mark tried to help Tom remain optimistic with notes and gestures they made to him. Another reason Tom was struggling more than Mark and Keith was because Tom also had more pre-existing medical conditions. He had high blood pressure, which he was supposed to take daily medication to treat, and poor eyesight, which back home he wore glasses for to compensate. However, the FARC refused to provide these things for him. It was also not uncommon for them to withhold medications or treatments for various different infections and diseases that the men would contract. Once, when Tom was receiving medicated eye drops to treat an eye infection, Polo, the guard who was responsible for locking the men up at night, and the camp medic, locked Tom up without giving him the medicine. Tom yelled at him to give him the medicine. Polo turned around and walked directly to the small window in the hooch and said, "I don't want to waste the medicine on you."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just cannot imagine how other people can treat people in such a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I can because I see it like happen, but I just cannot comprehend. I guess I couldn't comprehend me like being myself and saying that to someone.
Yeah, especially with like an eye infection, you'd be able to see it. It's not like, oh, it's out of sight, out of mind. It was a lot easier. No, I'm sure his eye was red and swollen, and you could see it. So to see someone suffering like that and just being like, nah.
I don't want to waste it on you.
Yeah.
Like, waste it. Like, not even just like, I don't want to give it to you. Like, giving it to you is a waste.
Yeah.
Like, that just destroys their humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, several days later, the camp was being bombed by fighter jets. However, since it was night, Keith, Mark, and Tom were locked in their hooches, unable to take cover. It was the Colombian army who was bombing the camp, and despite the men's worries, they left without attacking their hooches. They were shocked to have almost been killed by the good guys, but they also understood that the Colombian army could not stop their efforts to fight the FARC just because they were taken hostage.
Right. And do we even know if the military knew that they were there? I mean, they walked for 24 days in the jungle. They probably might not have even known where these hostages are.
Exactly. And from what I understand, they did not know at this time where they were. So they're just because 3 hostages are out there somewhere doesn't mean they can stop their efforts to try to fight the FARC.
Right.
So 3 days after the bombing at New Camp, they packed up their things and left. This march would be different though. For this march, they were ordered to be put into chains. The chains were not yet available, so when the orders were received, they used polyester cord instead, which they tied around the men's necks. A guerrilla held the opposite end of the line. Mark, Tom, and Keith were pulled side to side, up and down, as they moved through the jungle. If they tripped, the guerrillas would pull on their cords, treating the men like dogs, and exclaim, "Vámonos, vámonos."
Oh my
The FARC tried to justify these restraints by telling the men it was for their own good, but their tactics of manipulation did not work on Keith, Mark, and Tom. The group established a temporary camp, which the men called Mud Camp. In Mud Camp, they were essentially on top of one another because of the cords. They were tied up at all times. If a guerrilla was not holding the other end, then it was tied to a tree or a post. The guerrillas would have to untie the men to go to the bathroom. Sometimes the guards wouldn't come when they asked, and the men would have to plead with them to come untie them so they could go relieve themselves. The men also slept on a black plastic sheet at night and only had a thin sheet to keep them warm. Near the end of their stay at Mud Camp, Polo, the same guard who had withheld medicine from Tom, brought the men 9 bars of soap and told them that where they were going, this was hard to find.
Wow.
A few days later, the men were on the move again. This time they marched just a few hours and then took aluminum canoes down the river for 3 days. It was during this trip that the men learned they were going to be doing a proof of life video, though that was not how it was explained to them initially. They were told that they would be meeting a well-known journalist. However, before the filming began, the men were disappointed to learn that the well-known journalist was actually a journalist who worked with the FARC named Jorge Enrique Otero. Otero caught Mark off guard with a message from his mother, and then proceeded to catch all 3 of the men off guard when he told them about their co-workers, Tommy Janis, Sergeant Cruz, Ralph Ponticelli, Tommy Schmidt, and Butch Oliver, all of whom had died. Tommy J. and Sergeant Cruz, who were both on the plane with the men when it crashed, were both executed after the crash back in February. And Ralph Ponticelli, Tommy Schmidt, and Butch Oliver were leaving on a surveillance mission to look for Keith, Tom, and Mark when they crashed during takeoff and died in the crash.
Oh.
Yeah. And when they learned of their friend's death, they were devastated because they felt responsible for it, because Ralph, Tommy, and Butch had all died in an effort to try to look for them. Later that day, the men had a conversation with Mana Hohoi and their translator, and it became really clear that the men needed to have an escape plan in the event of a rescue. Because if the men didn't escape, the FARC would kill them.
Yeah.
From this point, the men always had an escape plan, and they even had small go kits of very small items that they had acquired from the FARC that could help them survive in the jungle. It included things like a hook and some line for fishing. One of them included like a little razor blade, different small things that they could use in the jungle that they could just grab and hold in their hand as they escaped from the camp. The most positive change that came because of the proof of life video was an easing of the separation and no talking orders. So up until this point, that has been enforced. They haven't been with each other and they haven't been allowed to speak with one another. This camp where they filmed the Proof of Life video was named Second Mud Camp, and after a couple months there, they were informed that they would again be moving to another camp. So at this point, it's October of 2003. The men has been prisoners for 8 months. And this next camp that they're moved to reminds them of a real prisoner of war camp. There's guard towers, multiple fences, and heavily armed guards. These guards also took their job more seriously and did not interact with the hostages as much as their previous guards had. So previously, the guards would talk and mingle with the men, and at times, the men were even able to barter for things using cigarettes. So they were given a pack of cigarettes, and then they would barter for other items with the guards and give them cigarettes for those items. And it was especially effective when the guards ran out of their cigarettes.
Yeah.
So, but these guards at this new camp didn't do that. When they arrived, they were led around the compound, past some military prisoners, over to another fenced holding area with a smaller group. Before they entered through the gates, they heard a woman say in Spanish, "They cannot fit here." The woman insisted that she speak with Sombra, the camp leader, in private. Sombra gave in and followed her to a hooch, and Keith, Mark, and Tom heard the two arguing for several minutes before Sombra stormed out of the hooch, past the men, and through the gate, which he slammed behind him. The woman, who was so upset and frustrated just moments earlier, came out with a smile on her face and welcomed the three men. She introduced herself as Ingrid Bennecourt. The men did not need her to elaborate who she was. They knew who she was. She was a French Colombian politician and a presidential candidate who was taken hostage the previous year when she entered the FARC's demilitarized zone for her campaign. Along with Ingrid, there were several other political hostages with differing amounts of time with the FARC. In the adjoining holding area, some of the military personnel had been hostages for 6 years.
That's just crazy that they held the hostages that long, too.
Yeah. In the book, as I was reading, it mentioned that the FARC tried to use these political prisoners to their advantage to get things that they wanted. So the FARC group is not a revolutionary group. They're terrorists.
Yeah.
They're terrorists. And they demand these things, but they're not causing a revolution of good changes. They're trying to bring a bunch of illegal practices into the country, and they're also harming people in the process. They've killed hundreds of innocent civilians. A bunch of them have died, and a bunch of hostages have also died. But they use these political hostages to try to get things like a demilitarized zone. So for those of you who don't know what a demilitarized zone is, it's an area of land that the military is not allowed to infiltrate, and that essentially is like a safe zone for that group. So previously, this group had a demilitarized zone given to them by the previous president of Colombia, and that is the area that Ingrid entered. And then from that area, because there was no army there, she was taken hostage.
Jeez.
Which I would just choose not to go in there.
Yeah, that's...
If I was up to me.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to risk that one.
But I'm not going to risk that. But they named this camp Camp Caribe. And the men learned that though the social interaction available with a larger group of hostages was nice, it also had its challenges. Some members attempted to control resources like books, radios, and even food, and while others controlled the showering schedule, dictating when people were allowed to shower. Not only was the tension with the hostages difficult, but the same language barrier that was present with the guards in all their previous camps was much more difficult to cope with here in Camp Caribe, because Tom had the ability to freely speak with anyone he liked. But Mark and Tom didn't have that luxury. As a result, Mark and Tom spent regular time every day studying Spanish and were even taught by some of the political hostages. And in return, they taught them English.
That's nice, at least that they're, I mean, That would suck not being able to communicate. So might as well, if you're there, try to learn the language.
Yeah, exactly. You're already immersed in it. You might as well try to learn it. In Camp Caribe, they now had regular access to radios as well. They listened to the radio nightly and received all kinds of information. They were also able to hear messages from their family members that were being aired on a late night show. Keith and Tom's family would send messages occasionally, but Mark's mother was the most consistent voice that they heard over the broadcast. Another voice that they heard over the radio often was the voice of a flight attendant named Patricia. Keith knew Patricia and had actually cheated on Malia, his fiancée, with her. Patricia found out later that she was pregnant with twins, and before the crash, Keith had confessed to Malia about everything that had happened, and the two of them decided that they were going to work through this challenge in their relationship. However, Malia only sent one message to Keith during his time in captivity, and that caused him to wonder if she had decided that things between them were done. Despite the concerns, Patricia's voice over the radio at the early hours of the morning gave Keith the strength he did not know he needed. After 6 months in Camp Caribe, all the hostages learned over the radio that there was a new plan in place between the US and Colombia. The plan was named Plan Patriot, and it was heavily funded by the US and entailed the US training of Colombian soldiers as special jungle commandos. Plan Patriot signified an intensified focus on military actions against the FARC. The whole goal of Plan Patriot was to kill or capture the main leaders of the FARC. This plan was more focused than Plan Colombia, which was put into place to help fight the cocaine production in Colombia as a whole, but did not involve US military units on the ground within the country. What Plan Colombia did allow for was surveillance crews like Tom, Mark, and Keith's, and at this point, Plan Colombia had done really well, but it had failed to eliminate the root of the problem, which is the FARC.
Yeah.
So now, with Plan Patriot, the Colombian army also had the U.S. Army as a resource to help strengthen their efforts to eliminate the FARC.
Yeah, because if they're just focusing on stopping the fields or plants or whatever, sounds like the FARC are moving around a lot. So they have a lot of camps that they can just run to the next camp. So it's not that devastating to them or not.
Yeah.
Doesn't impact them as well. Okay, we'll just march to the next camp.
Yeah, and they're Keith and Mark and Tom talk about how resourceful the FARC are and how good at living off the land these people are, because they're always on the move and they're always in the jungle. And so they depend on the jungle to meet their needs, and they're really good at it. So they're nomads. They just move around and they make camp wherever they're at. In September 2004, after 11 months at Camp Caribe, the entire camp was evacuated because the area they were occupying had experienced an increase in air activity. Black Hawks, fighter jets, and other military aircraft had been patrolling extremely close to the camp. With little notice, Tom, Keith, and Mark packed their things and began the 40-day march. This march was the most strenuous of all their travels to date with the Colombians. Though all three of them had tried to stay in good physical condition, all hostages' rations had been cut back substantially since the announcement of Plan Patriot in June. So this is September. In June, so for the last 4 months, right? June, July, August. September. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the last 4 months, their rations were cut substantially, which made it difficult for them to continue strengthening their bodies because they didn't have the calories they needed.
Yeah. I mean, marching for 40 days, how were they? Because Colombia is not that big of a country.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is, but not. But so where were they I guess also going through the jungle, it takes longer. But 40 days seems like you'd be able to cover a lot of terrain.
Yeah. You also have to remember that it's a very mountainous country. It's jungle and there's lots of mountains. So they're going up and down mountains, they're going through valleys, and then, like you said, they're having to move through the jungle, which is full of dense vegetation. And at some points, they are on paths that the FARC have already made, but they're also, at other points, going through parts that have not been traveled, and the leaders are using their machetes to clear a path.
And the Andes are in Colombia, right? Or what's the mountain range in there? I thought I looked it up before.
There's several mountain ranges.
Yeah.
Okay. So the mountain ranges in Colombia are the Cordillera, um, the Cordillera Occidental, Cordillera. Oh, I don't know how to say that. Central. So there's the Occidental, Central, and Oriental
Yeah,
mountain
because it says, yeah, the
ranges.
Andes Mountains are indeed in Colombia.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Hold on.
because but they're forming the three main mountain ranges, which are the ones that you listed: the Occidental, Central, and Oriental.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Okay, so those are all part of the Andes, and
Yeah.
then not a. There's another range that's not part of the Andes, and it's the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta
Oh, okay.
range. So there's lots of mountains here, and
Jeez.
we'll post a picture of the map too. You can kind of see. Um, I will also I guess for better context, I will kind of make a map and point where the definite locations that these men were in, so
Mm.
we can kind of see how they traveled. It's kind of hard because a lot of their time is in the jungle and they're not near any civilization. So we're not sure exactly where they were at, but I can show you definitely like the parts of the country when they're close to cities, because they mention that they can hear or they travel through a city. So I'll find a way to make a map of that so we can see where
Okay.
they're at.
I mean, yeah, because it's a pretty good size. But 40 days is just a long time to travel.
Yeah, it is. So and then you wonder like where they're going.
Yeah. Are
Yeah.
they just having them, and they could have them be marching like almost zigzag
Back and
just to,
forth.
yeah.
Yeah, or in circles too.
Yeah.
Um, so because their rations had been cut substantially, they didn't have the strength that they needed, as I mentioned earlier. But not only did they not have the strength they needed, they also were carrying more personal items than they were back in October on their 24-day march, because now they've been with the FARC for
You said 11 months?
19 months total. So
Oh,
11
shoot.
months
Yeah.
in Camp Caribe.
Oh,
So
dang.
it's
Yeah. Oh,
September, yeah.
of the
September of
following year.
2004. Yes.
Okay. Dang.
Yep. So it's been over a year and a half now that they've been in captivity. I say captivity, but like they're not animals. I don't know. They've been
Yeah,
hostages.
they're being held captive.
They're captive. Yeah, so captivity, I
Yeah.
guess. um so they have a lot more things that they're packing with them, and they brought everything with them from Camp Caribe. So they had books, they had journals that they're writing in, a bunch of things. And because their packs have a lot more things, they're heavier to hold. So, even though they didn't have much to begin with, the men began shedding items from their packs as their time on the ground continued. Books, games, some extra clothes, and other odds and ends that they had collected were left every morning before they headed out back on their march. This daily ritual persisted until finally their packs were just the absolute essentials. Throughout the march, each man had to find strength somewhere. Keith found it in defiance. He refused to let the FARC win. Marc found it in his faith, and Tom found it in his family and his anticipated return home. During the 40-day march, Tom, Keith, and Marc were able to meet and interact with the military prisoners more than they had back at Camp Caribe. The military hostages were chained together at the neck throughout the march. Despite the terrible conditions, Tom, Keith, and Marc admired the military and police hostages. They demonstrated incredible mental and physical strength despite the inhumane treatment they were experiencing. As the march progressed, groups of hostages and FARC began to peel off and head in separate directions. This meant that the FARC's most valuable hostages were no longer being kept together, which gave the FARC the upper hand. After 40 days, the group rested for a week and then took a quick boat trip and a truck ride into the Macarena Mountains and spent 3 weeks at a temporary camp. Here, they were able to resupply and continue eating well. Their new front leader, Milton, enjoyed hunting and oftentimes would stop and go out to hunt and bring food back for the camp, including Marc, Tom, and Keith. That is where we are going to stop for
Oh,
this first part.
dang. That's insane. I just can't imagine. And I'm sure their mindset is like, okay, if we're going to march another day, here goes another book. But hoping that like maybe today will be the day we don't have to walk again.
Yeah.
And every day.
Yeah, dropping
hoping that you
something
didn't.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, hoping they don't have to get rid of something else that
Yeah.
they've taken so long for them to acquire.
Yeah. And I'm sure like some of those books or journals were like meant a lot to them. Like, okay, this is the thing that's
Mhm.
helping me stay sane.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they left
Then
any journals, but I know that they left books, they left other things like games or other items that they didn't necessarily consider essential,
right.
like
Yeah.
mirrors or like razors.
Yeah, I'd say books would probably be like, although it's like reading's good and I'm sure that helped, but books are heavy.
Yeah, they
So,
are.
dang.
Well, any questions up to this point?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Do we, I guess they don't have any operations to rescue these men other than like if we find them, we find them. If not, we're just going to keep on trying to take
As of
down
right
the
now,
FARC.
yeah, as of right now, I don't remember there being an actual plan in place. I mean, Plan Patriot is in place. The US is
Mhm.
more involved trying to help with the FARC. They also, the FARC is trying to negotiate, but the United States does not negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah.
And other politicians also, we're going to dive into this. Other politicians from other countries also, actually, I don't dive into this. So I'm just going to tell you this now. Other politicians, like political representatives from France, get involved because Ingrid, who I mentioned earlier, is a French Colombian politician.
Okay. Yeah. That was
So
my
she
next
has,
question.
yeah, so she has dual citizenship. So France also gets involved at some point and tries to negotiate things. Um, and then as well as the United States, they're also involved. And Venezuela gets involved. And so we'll talk
Yeah,
a
I was
little bit more
gonna.
about Venezuela's impact and relationship and role in this. But yeah, there are some efforts being made, but also at this time the United States, not that they're too occupied, but the United States, this is 2003. Do you remember what happened in 2003 that I've talked about on this podcast, Michelle?
2003. Oh, is that when we joined? That has to be during the Iraqi War because 2001 is 9/11 when we
Yep.
entered. So they were still going through the
Yeah, so the Iraq war is like has just
going on.
started within the last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So the men got taken hostage in February and the Iraq war started in March.
Oh, yeah. So it's like, and not that this is the best, but I'm sure like, okay, they found, if they found the bodies of the two other guys that were killed at the crash site, and then for people to be gone a year and a half, you're probably gonna assume the worst and that they're dead.
Yes, but their proof of life video
Oh,
was
that's true.
sent
There
out
was a
as
proof of
well.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, so the
Forgot
FARC is
about that.
making demands, but the United States doesn't negotiate with terrorists, but the demands that they're making are for a prisoner exchange. So they want an
Mm,
exchange of FARC prisoners from the Colombian government for the hostages. And not
yeah.
just for the Americans, for all the political hostages, for their civilian hostages.
Military.
Yeah, military, police hostages. They want exchanges for,
Jeez.
yeah. This
That would,
it's
and that would be so hard hearing on the radio. Like all of these
yeah.
things going on. They might even hear now about, the US joining the Iraqi war and they're
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah, they have heard about it
well,
at this point and they're kind of they mention in the book because they helped write this book.
mm-hmm.
So it's their first person accounts with the author who helped write the book in a engaging way.
Right, help them kind of get their thoughts and
Yeah,
make it into a book.
get it ordered. Yeah. But they even mentioned that when they heard about the United States joining the Iraq War or engaging in the Iraq War, they became so discouraged
Yeah.
because they were like, their efforts are focused there, and we're stuck here on the other side of the world.
Yeah. Man.
And something else. So in the United States, if military personnel are taken hostage, then the military, it's, if I remember correctly, it's considered an act of war. If military personnel are taken hostage in a foreign country, and then the U.S. military can engage. They are not
Mm.
military personnel at this time.
Oh, right. They're technically civilians.
They're retired. So they're civilian contractors. So they're kind of stuck.
Yeah. And they know it.
Yeah, they know it. They know it too. They know that they're stuck. They know that the Colombians, they don't have too much faith in the Colombian army at this point because they're not as well trained as the United States Army is, especially their special forces, which is why they found so much confidence when Plan Patriot was announced.
Right. So they're like, okay, at least the U.S. is coming in to help
Yeah.
train. That, and if they ran into other hostages that have been in there for 6 years,
Yeah, how
they're
discouraging
like,
would that be?
yeah, like, oh, you've been here 6 years. Oh, great. That's
Yeah.
promising.
And it was either Mark or Tom. I want to say it was Tom. But at one point, I think it was during their stay at New Camp, so their second camp that they were in. Uh, like I said, I want to say it was Tom, and I'll double check myself and correct myself if I need to in part two. But there was one point that Tom just kept having this thought that we're going to be here for 6 years. We're going to be here for 6 years. And that just was a recurring thought for him. And it wasn't something that he wanted to think about, but it was almost
Right.
like he was having this premonition, oh, we're going to be here for 6 years.
Mm.
Because they
See,
were
but I,
captive for 5.5 years.
yeah, so he was pretty close.
that
And
was-
I almost,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I'd rather, instead of every day, you're going to be held captive for 6 years, rather than not know. And have a feeling like, okay, if I have this feeling, 6 years, you almost have a time frame, rather than, who knows?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. As all the FARC were saying, who knows?
Ugh.
Like, how mad
Yeah.
would that make you if people were
I would be
asking, if you're asking questions and they're like, who knows?
You're like stumbling through the jungle. They cut the toes off your boots because your feet are too big. Your clothes don't fit you right. And they're like, meh, who knows? Like, you know.
But the
Jeez.
thing is, they didn't know. These lower guerrillas were just following their orders. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know where they were going. They were just following their orders.
And is this the type of, like, because you said teenagers that came and got them. So are a lot of them just young kids?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these lower guards are young kids, teenagers, young adults who have not experienced much of the world or of life and have been essentially brainwashed by the FARC.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if I go into this, but a lot of these kids, they join the FARC and then don't think that what they're doing is right, but they are more scared that they're going to lose their lives if they leave the FARC than what they're more scared of that than what they're doing.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of them are threatened, like, if you don't join us, we're going to kill your family. Or if you don't do this, we're going to kill you. So
yeah, and they know that if they don't follow their orders, that they will be killed.
Yeah.
That's the option.
How horrible.
But some of these people and these kids or these leaders are so brainwashed or so convinced that what they are doing is right that, as I've mentioned a couple times, they try to manipulate these men and make them think. They try to make them experience, what's it called? The psychological, when hostages start believing.
Like Stockholm Syndrome?
Stockholm Syndrome, thank you. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're trying to cause a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome, but since the men know about it and they know what's right and they're holding on to what they know, they're able to refrain from giving in to Stockholm
Believing that,
Syndrome.
yeah. That's insane.
Yeah. This episode, I'm going to give a warning for people who think about maybe reading or listening to the book. It's heavy at some parts. So, just so you know, it's heavy. There's death, there's suicide, there's a really terrible, sad story about a mother being separated from her newborn baby. There's animal cruelty, just so you know, there's a lot of terrible things that we're not going to address in either of these parts that I didn't, because I didn't want to share. I want this to kind of be like a more of a family friendly episode, even though we're talking about a heavy subject. And I also want to focus on the rescue and not on all the terrible things that they experienced, even though those
Right.
were really important things that happened to them.
But just know that a lot of bad things happened.
A lot of bad things happen. And if you want to learn more, you can read the book. Again, that's called Out of Captivity, Surviving 1,967 Days in the Colombian Jungle. And I found it at a thrift store for $1. So,
Woot woot!
even better. But,
Score.
okay, Michelle, did you have any questions to go over? Fun little things to do?
Yes. I have some would you rathers to start out with.
Okay.
So, would you rather be stranded in the Amazon rainforest with only a butter knife, or up in the Andes and only have a flint and steel?
Wait, so say the first one again. Only a butter knife, but where am I?
In the rainforest, like in the Amazon rainforest.
Okay, in the Amazon with a butter knife, or in the Andes with flint and steel.
Yes.
Those both suck. I think I'm going to choose the butter knife, though, because the butter knife and the Amazon rainforest, because I don't want to be stuck at that high of altitude in the Andes, probably not having super reliable access to... I mean, I guess it depends on where I'm at in the Andes. If I'm on the top, then ain't no way in heck I'm choosing the Andes, because cold, and how am I going to get firewood? Because I'm pretty sure you're above the tree line on the top of the Andes.
Looking up pictures, it looked pretty barren.
Yeah, so I'm going to choose the butter knife and the rainforest.
Yeah, I think I would do the same. Because one, at least the butter knife, it's not very sharp. You can't cut down trees necessarily, but the fruit and the food,
You
at
might be
least
able to
you
crack
could...
some fruit open. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Would you rather be stranded with a bunch of strangers that you don't necessarily trust, or would you rather be stranded and like held hostage, but by yourself?
With a bunch of strangers.
Same. Mentally, I don't think I could
yeah.
do it alone.
I don't know if I could do it alone either. Yeah,
And
I
at
would
least-
want to have at least one other person with me, so then I could interact a little bit.
And I'm sure if you're with a bunch of strangers and you're in the same predicament, I'm pretty sure you would have something in common.
Yeah. But, I mean, I haven't told you about this because it's too much detail to go into. But I kind of touched on it. It was also really hard for these guys. Like, they got put with these political hostages, but like some of them controlled the food and the books.
Yeah.
And like the shower schedule, like
That's
when they
true.
could shower.
You're like, excuse me, we're all being held hostage, and you're gonna tell me when I can and cannot shower? Like, no.
Right?
That's what you're gonna do. Yeah.
So I think it has pros and cons, but I think I'd still pick being with a group.
That's true. And have you ever seen the movie Predators?
No, I haven't actually.
When they get sent to a planet and there's a whole bunch of predators and they're all like stuck on this island and the predators or planet and this, yeah, they're not all good people. So
I'll have to add it to my
all right.
list.
Yeah, it's my favorite of the Predator series, but that's another thing.
I haven't seen any of the Predator movies. The only part I saw was when I was sitting on your couch and it came on the TV.
Oh yeah, no, wasn't that when we were at the family reunion and you guys came in?
Yeah, that wasn't your
you're
couch.
like, what
I was
is
like, what
this?
is this?
Yeah,
like, it's the Predator, and I was like, oh, good night.
You didn't know from the little crackly voice thing, the night vision. You're like, I'm out, peace.
I'm going to bed. My daughter's gonna wake up 3 times tonight, so I'm gonna go to sleep. That's what it was.
And I'm not gonna dream about predators, so I recommend them.
Okay, I'll check them out.
Okay, so would you rather eat roasted ants or blended cockroaches on toast?
Roasted ants or blended cockroaches?
Yeah, like on a frying pan, you just can pick up the ants and eat them. Or blend the cockroaches and slab that stuff right on a piece of toast and eat it.
It's disgusting. Probably the ants. What about you?
I think I would do ants too. I hear ants aren't even that bad.
Yeah,
depending on the ant.
I wouldn't know.
Some of them say it tastes like sour candy. So just
How big are these ants? Are we talking about like little tiny black ants? Or are we talking like
not like medium size, not like a full on crazy ant, but like a good size ant that you can get a good crunch. Yeah.
nasty?
As the people can see our fingers being held up.
Yeah, we're like holding up an inch.
Yeah.
Like, just in case I'm like showing Michelle.
Yeah.
Like, what the freak?
Yeah. This big.
This big. It was this big. And my fingers are like.
It was this big. No more would you rathers, but I do have the 2 truths and a lie. All right. And because of this, and I knew you're gonna do something about since I knew you were gonna do something about Colombia, and like I said, the first thing I thought of was Pablo Escobar's hippos. These 2 truths and lies are about hippos. Okay, so hippos breathing is an automatic response, and they resurface and breathe even while sleeping, because hippos can't actually swim. They bounce up and down on the surface.
Yeah,
Fun fact.
I learned that.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Hippo herds are matriarchal, or hippos are usually born on land in tall grass at night to prevent the newborn baby from getting overheated and sunburned.
I want to say the matriarchal could be true, but I know that hippos get sunburned, and that's why they say it spend a lot of time in the water. At least I think I know that. I feel confident, but the way you're looking at me says I'm not.
No.
And I know that they can't swim, and they have to resurface to breathe water. And I want to say it's an automatic response, and they even do it sleeping, but I can't remember if it's automatic. The word automatic's catching me off guard. So I'm going to say matriarchal order is false.
That is actually, hippos are matriarchal and led by a female. Hippos have their babies in the water, and because hippos, can't breathe underwater, they have the babies underwater, and the mom has to push it up so it can breathe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they kind of have to hold it up and let it breathe. And
so if I had a water birth, I'd be like a hippo.
Correct. Yep. You can just push your little baby up.
New life goals.
Yeah. I don't think
I don't know if I could do
ever want a water birth. Did you see the lady who gave birth in the ocean?
No.
Crazy.
That doesn't surprise me.
Crazy people. Not very sanitary. Yeah.
Well,
can you imagine?
What if you tore in the salt water?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you probably wouldn't feel the pain
ocean's very clean to have a newborn.
Yeah, but I mean, also,
people are crazy.
I mean, neither is that region, so.
True. But
anyway,
giving birth and then having a baby stung by a jellyfish.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, imagine
I don't know
that
what
would suck.
it was. Yeah.
But we don't hate on you,
all right,
whoever you are. If you're listening, we admire you. We
no judgment in ocean births. Yeah. Personally, ocean's not my favorite place. All right. I'm gonna do what is your favorite Shakira song, because Shakira is from Colombia.
My favorite Shakira song. Pretty sure. My favorite Shakira song is Don't Lie.
That's such a good one.
You make cool and go.
Yeah, Shakira's Colombian.
You double checked it.
Yeah, I was like, wait, now I'm second guessing myself. My favorite Shakira song is Whenever. Is it Whatever, Whenever? Whatever. Whenever.
Wherever, whenever?
Yeah, that one. That's my favorite. And I dance to it often when I do Just Dance.
Just Dance? We always dance to that one when we get on Just Dance.
That's because it's my favorite one.
It's my favorite one on Just
also,
Dance right now.
It's so fun. Also, she's I like Zootopia. That is like my
Try
movie
Everything.
I love. Judy Hopps, and Try Everything is another.
Actually, I have
Good
to
one.
change my song.
Go
That's
Shakira.
my favorite.
That one is so good. What is she, an Impala or something like that in that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for the second Zootopia. So,
I know, me too.
fun times. November, our birthday.
Woo!
Woo. All right. And then I have a fun fact to finish us off. So, Colombia is the second most biodiverse country in the world, and 14% of their animals are endemic, meaning they only exist in Colombia. So, a lot of these are like birds and insects and stuff, but some of them are a blue-billed corozo, the sapphire-bellied hummingbird, buffy helicrest, Tolima bluesum crown, the golden poison dart frog, cotton top tamarin, the brown spider monkey, and the Santa Marta white-fronted capuchin.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool. They have such a wide variety, and it's very biodiverse there. So
Yeah, a
go
lot of
Colombia.
diversity.
Yeah. Stop growing that cocaine.
Stop your illegal drug operations.
Yeah, focus on the animals.
There you go.
And hippos.
And hippos. Those hippos need to get out of there.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a
They
conversation
do-
for another time.
That's a
A whole
other
other
episode.
Well, we will see you next time for part 2, where you learn.
Yeah.
We're gonna learn about their rescue, a little bit more time that they spend, because at this point, it's only the end of 2004, so they've only been in captivity for over a year and a half. Only. So
Stay
we still
tuned
have
for
4
part
more years
2.
to go. Yeah. Stay tuned
That's
for part 2.
insane. All right. See you, everyone.
Yep. Bye.